Good evening. Thank you everyone for showing up tonight. Thank you everyone for your interest, and thank you so much for joining us. This is Women, the Law, and Justice, a panel discussion by SisterReach. And for those of you who are new or who may not know, SisterReach is a reproductive justice organization located right here in Memphis, Tennessee. We focus on reproductive justice from a human rights perspective for rural women and girls of color, low income and poor women and girls. And our service area is right here in Memphis, as well as some of these surrounding areas as we begin our rural outreach. I am Giovanni Dorch. I am the Policy and Civic Engagement Associate. Our founder, Ms. Cherie Scott, is right here up front. We also have our lovely interfaith and outreach coordinator, Reverend Faye London, over here. She will be moderating tonight. We have a great group of panelists, women who are doing serious work in the community, and we are very proud to present them on tonight because they are doing marvelous work throughout the city and have been for years. To my far right, we have Ms. Betty Boone. She is the Memphis chapter president of the Coalition of 100 Black Women. Next to her, we have Ms. Tammy Greer. She is representing Memphis Artists for Change. To her left, we have Ms. Aliette Murray-Druggett from the Family Safety Center, also located here in Memphis. And last but definitely not least, doing some wonderful work, Sister Jasira Olatunji of Left Foot Forward. So I'm going to have Faye come up and introduce everyone and get us started. She will be moderating through the night. A few notes. How many of you have your phones here tonight? Y'all know everybody else. Okay. So, two things. One, will you please silence it now? Second thing, feel free to share this on social media. Tweet, Instagram, Periscope, Facebook, Snapchat, wherever you are, take us with you. Definitely share the event. The hashtag we're using tonight is Women, the Law, and Justice. And of course, hashtag SisterReach. So if you will plan on sharing tonight, please do feel free to do so. And we're going to stop about a half hour before closing time. And everyone has an index card in your seat, and we'll have some pins going around later. If you have any questions, if you have any notes, if you have some brilliant ideas that we need to implement to further justice for women in this city, write them down. We want to hear from you. The whole goal of our organization is to represent you. So we want to definitely make sure we are taking your concerns seriously and taking them to the places that they need to be so that we can actually see some change here in Memphis. So I'm going to get Faye up here and she's going to get us started. And again, thank you, everyone. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. Good evening. Good evening. I am really, really excited to see so many interested and interesting faces in the room. We are really grateful that we have the space to have this conversation. We want to thank Leadership Memphis for the use of the space, and we want to make sure that I am saying thank you to each of you for making time to participate in this conversation. Just really quickly, a couple of reasons why we think this conversation is important. So it's an election year, right? And we are having lots of discussions about what's going on the national level, right? We know who those candidates and hopefuls and people who may no longer be hopefuls and all of those people are. We kind of know what else is happening on the national level, but what we find oftentimes is that we don't discuss as much what's going on right here at home and right here around us and how that connects then to what's happening at the national level. And so part of the reason why we're here tonight is to really consider what's happening in Memphis with women and what needs to what this conversation needs to be expanded in order for us to accomplish whatever we decide needs to happen, right? We're also here to make sure that we as voters, many of us, most of us I think are of voting age, are really plugged in to the things that we might want to consider as we go into voting booths, because who we elect on the national level impacts what we do
what we're able to do on a local level and vice versa. And so it's very important that we have our conversations so that we get to be the ones who decide what we need and then create an agenda that helps us to be who we need to be. And another reason is because we want to engage really what's happening on the ground in the lives of women and girls and young people in our area, including those things that are really difficult and stressful to discuss. We have an issue with violence, and particularly we have to address the ways in which violence from within our government and violence in our communities relate to one another, and what it is that we as women have, what stake do we have in that conversation. So those are the three reasons why this conversation was implemented. We've got to recognize that community safety is a reproductive justice issue. And we can talk a little bit more deeply about that as we go forward. So I'm gonna do one quick thing, and then I'm gonna start this conversation off. I'm going to ask our panelists to each introduce ourselves, because I'm still I'm probably going to be in kind of this space, right? But as you introduce yourself, talk about, first of all, tell us who you are and what you do, right? And how you got involved in whatever the work is that you do and why. And then I would really love to hear a statement just about really what justice means, like this broad concept of justice, what that looks like in your imagination based on the work that you do. Does that make sense? Is it clear as well as people say? So I will start off and be the example. My name is Faye London. I'm the Interfaith Outreach Coordinator for SisterReach. I got involved in this work from an interest in my seminary studies in work around bodies and Black women's bodies in particular, and ways in which sometimes faith speak can be violent to our bodies and the way that we understand our bodies, and wanting to try to change that conversation. For me, justice looks like, partially like I'm not even needing to gather for this conversation because the needs of women are already being sufficiently addressed. So that's my spiel. So Jasira, you want to start? How your work impacts women and girls, what do you do, how do you get involved in it, and kind of what does justice look like?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jasira Olatunji. I'm the founder of Love for Poor. That is an organization that addresses the issue of sexual child abuse, and we also look to do that by prevention, through education, and also by promoting healing through the arts. Why this is especially dear to me is because starting at the age of 9, I was molested by 3 different individuals and ultimately resulted in my being raped at the age of 15, which resulted in the birth of my first child. My life spiraled downward, and it wasn't until I moved here to Memphis 10 years ago and started interacting with the artist community that I really did find true healing out of all of the things that I had been doing and seeing the therapist. And also once I began doing the research and saw the statistics of our children and what the chances are of them being abused versus our natural chance of being born left-handed, I realized that we have an epidemic in our community. And through my art, as I started performing and talking about what happened to me, I was really floored by the amount of people who would approach me afterward and share that they had been through the same thing, because in my mind I really thought that I was one of the few that it had ever happened to. So that's why I do what I do. I do it for women and girls and boys and men. I do it for everyone. As far as what justice looks like to me, my definition of justice is that justice is the reward for good and the punishment for evil.
The reward for good and the punishment for evil. Okay. And really quickly, I don't know if you have the numbers in your head, but what is that relationship between the number of people who live with a history of abuse and the number of people who are going left-handed?
Sexually, and 1 in 6 boys. But since only 10% of sexual abuse cases are actually reported, that number is actually looking like half. So the estimate, ideally, well not ideally, but realistically, is probably 1 in 2 girls and 2 in 4 boys, whereas 1 in 13 people are born left-handed.
Thank you. Thank you for your introduction. And we'll definitely come back and kind of revisit some of that. So, Aliyette?
So I'm Aliyette Murray Drobo, the Executive Director of the Family Safety Center, and we serve individuals in Memphis and Shelby County. We serve as a central entry point for anyone who's suffering from domestic violence, and we do that through advocating for victims as well as working towards systems change, also working to address barriers to really women and men and others really gaining access to fairness and equity in the system. I come to this work through my own personal connection to growing up in a home where there was domestic violence, and I can remember my mom fleeing and going into hiding with myself and my younger sister, and how much of a struggle that was for her to keep her full-time job and also maintain her safety. And so for me, what justice looks like is a woman being safe in public space as well as at home.
Awesome. Thank you, Aliyette. So, Tamika,
Do I get a moment to soak all of it? I mean,
you get a moment to what?
soak all of it.
Soak all of it in. Breathe
Okay.
for a hot second. Miss Betty, are you ready to do that? You sure? Because I'm about to ask you to make it stand in two spaces, Southern Alliance and, the arts, and bring all of that into. You ready?
Yeah.
You good? Okay.
I'm Tamika Greer. I am, as Faye alluded to, I'm the program director of South Memphis Alliance. This is a local nonprofit here that serves our main program serves young people in foster care. And our flagship program is our Social Studies Resource Center, which is basically what we call a social service center with laundromat. Other people call it laundromat. But it's a place where we try to bring different social service providers into the community. Just about every social ill or negative outcome that most organizations are trying to affect or affect change in, you're going to find somebody who comes to that laundromat and needs those services. So it was a genius idea by our executive director, Mr. Reginald Milton, several years ago. We're very proud of that program, so shameless plug. If any of you don't have Washington Drive in your house, you can stop by South Memphis Alliance, drop the clothes off and do some laundry, because all of our profits go to benefit young people in foster care. So it's a shameless plug because it is all about doing social work. And if you do have Washington Drive in your house, you can't wash your comforters in. So you can drop those off. And you can say you've done some social activism. I'm also the founder of Memphis Artists for Change, which is an organization that came about in the early 2000s when I got tired of hearing about the apathy and the apathy in people in this city about change and not doing anything and being so murky. There's a stigma associated with artists that they're lazy, when they do anything. And myself being a spoken word artist, who's a working artist, working as a spoken word artist and working my day job, I felt like I was that typical to that. So what I also wanted to do was be a catalyst for change in my city. And I knew a lot of other people who were artists who wanted to be catalysts for change in the city. So I tried to provide some type of support for local artists to either create a platform for themselves, do a show, garner an audience. In exchange, we go back and do some community service, whether it be working at the South Food Bank, going to serve kids at the Kid Cafe, wherever we can give a hand. We support other organizations. We also do small fundraisers for organizations. How did I come about this work? The thing that seems to ring constantly is all of us some kind of way out of our own situations we're drawn to this work. And I can relate to both of the testaments of the beautiful women to my left. So I came about this work because I was born into poverty in this city. I was raised by a single mom, and so many of the negative ills that people say come out of those situations, not only did I face, but many of them I overcame. Some of them I'm still even wrestling with, and the work is ongoing. So I came about it because I lived it. My day job and my fun job is kind of social work, so you can pray for me. But my idea of justice, equal access, equal opportunity for everyone, and a very level playing field when it comes to judging people for their wrongs and is committed in this community. Not that we should not judge them, but we should judge them equally.
Oh, I am just blown away with my sisters who are here. I'm the oldest one sitting up here, all right? And it is so beautiful to have sisters who are still carrying on the work. And I applaud you for your efforts. I'm Betty Boone, president of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. We are an advocacy organization with 62 chapters throughout the country. And I came about being involved with this organization because I'm not from Memphis. I'm, well, from Atlanta, Georgia, by the way of Miami, Florida to Memphis. So I came here, and after I lost my husband, I was looking for something after I retired too and traveling all over the place. I was looking for something that I could do that would make an impact. And I heard about this organization and the things they have been working with women and girls. One of their earlier programs was pregnancy prevention in Bethany Homes, working with the moms and a program with the teen moms. And that just really piqued my interest. And so I became a part of the organization. Been in the organization. It is celebrating 35 years this year. It's been around for a long time. A lot of great women in the city and across the country have been a part of this. Our mission is to advocate on behalf of African American women and girls in the area of leadership development and around equity issues of health, education, economic empowerment. We accomplish this goal through partnering and collaborating. And when we partner and collaborate, it does not matter to us your racial line. It doesn't matter to us your political affiliation. What matters to us is that your goal is the same as our goal, is that to improve the life of women and girls in our community. And so we do that by way of programs. But all of you sitting here know that programs are great, and we do programs in a lot of different areas. But programs only last for a moment. And it does, if they're important, they increase knowledge and understanding and information. But one of the things that this organization does, as well as the others, is that we want to change laws. When you change laws, then you change a life. You change lifetime efforts and situation. So advocacy involves us making a difference in these areas that we are involved in, which ours is health, education, economic empowerment, which is so broad. But we take an opportunity to collaborate and work with others, and so that we narrow our focus to those things that we can accomplish. Now, when you ask me what justice means, it means to me being just. It means fairness and equity. Equal pay, equal work. I'm using that as it because there are some issues around that, but that's what justice means to me. Being just, being fair in everything that we do. And knowing that justice is not for one person, but for all people.
Awesome. Thank you all for your introduction. So I'm going to ask this because it's the Southern girl in me. Is it okay for us to be on first name basis?
Yes.
Okay. So that's an awesome place to set that down, that conversation down, because it really kind of enters into our, what I think of as the framing question that helps us to really dig into what justice and equity opportunities have been looking like and maybe what they should look like. So this one I'm just going to toss out there. In future questions I might point to somebody, but this one I'm going to toss out there. Whoever feels like picking it up, pick it up. So President Obama and the My Brother's Keeper initiative, right, to address education, employment, incarceration, and other issues in young black men. And we are really, we know that those are things that need to be addressed. However, I wonder, what do we feel, panelists, that says to us about the priorities of lawmakers regarding the lives of women and girls in America? What are those priorities? If you just look at My Brother's Keeper and maybe what should they be if they're not what you think they should be?
Can I start it off? Start off with that. When you talk about my brother's keeper and employment, education, incarceration, all of those issues impact women. You may talk about your brother, but we are joined together at the hip. You know, women need men, men need women. Simple as that. When a boyfriend, husband, daddy of the child goes to jail, is incarcerated, come out, can't get a job because they have a felony record, or they get a job and it's temporary, it affects the household. It affects that woman, all right? And the same way with women. If women are incarcerated, have done, they committed a crime, did their time, they come out, but they're continually doing time. Because the way the laws are written, that if you have a felony over certain many years, then you may get some temporary employment, but you won't get long-term employment. It affects the apartments. You can't get apartments. So it affects housing. It affects employment. It affects education. If you want to go into to get a higher education, go to college, it affects the federal grant program that you can go into. So all of these issues, even though he's talking about my brother's keeper, it's not just, and it is for men because the majority of African American population is incarcerated. Some of the younger people, if you look at it, there's more incarceration of African Americans than there are any other race group. So it impacts the family. It impacts the family structure. When the man, whether it's a boyfriend, a father, a brother, whatever, leaves the home, that impact, that imprint that person could have made on a child is no longer there to be made.
Yeah, I definitely hear you on that connection between when there's a family impacted by somebody not being present. However, I wonder what the message really is. I want to just press for a minute what the message really is when we then say this is a problem. Let's put together an initiative to address the problems of men. When, as we've already acknowledged right here, none of these issues are necessarily just right. And we're also, and so I want to hear if there's anybody else who hears something else in My Brother's Keeper and that language and that initiative or some other opportunities. Because we do not I do not dislike our outgoing president personally. However, I wonder if there are some messages. I'm always big on messages. There's some messages that we might hear.
I would say I struggle with that because, yes, women, or particularly African American women, may not be dying at the same rate, but we're barely surviving. It's not like we're thriving. I look at Memphis and Shelby County, the Family Safety Center, and I think that poverty helps to prolong the victimization, that they need that additional, whatever it is, if he's babysitting the kids, if he's not even working, if he's babysitting the kids, or he's bringing some income into the household, and if they were able to be economically self-sufficient, they could break away from that relationship much quicker. And I do what Therese talks about all the time about the intersection of issues. I definitely see that hand in hand, the poverty rate that we have in Memphis and the level of domestic violence that we have in the city.
Anybody else want to weigh in a little bit on kind of what our lawmakers' priorities seem to be? And we can take it out of the context of My Brother's Keeper if that becomes uncomfortable. But just in general, what do our lawmakers' priorities seem to be regarding women? Think in Tennessee. Let's take it from the national level. In Tennessee, what do our lawmakers' priorities seem to be regarding women? We can move on.
They seem to be geared towards the profit as opposed to the people. Law. You know, so regarding women, regarding poverty, regarding crime, but in regards to women, so it's easy for laws to be passed by a large population of men who want to dictate or identify, with what is best, control with what is best for women. I find it very difficult. I guess the reason I didn't really want to initially speak on that question is because I think a lot of people always want to tell people in situations what's best for them. Oftentimes without consulting those people. So, if I can, there's a story about a man who married a woman, right? And she cooked the ham every year for Christmas. So she cooked the ham every year for Christmas. So one year he decided to cook the ham, right? So she walked in the kitchen, he had the ham in the pot, she was upset. He was like, what's wrong? You didn't cut the ends of the ham off. You have to cut both ends of the ham off. So he was like, why? You don't have to do that. It's like you do. She said, you do. Ask my mom. She did it. It's the only way she cooked it. So she called her mom. She said, yeah, you have to cut both ends of the ham off. I was like, why? She said, it's the only way you cook it. Ask my mom. So they called her mom. They said, hey, why you have to cut both ends of the ham off? She said, we didn't have a big enough pot. You know what I mean? So you dictate to someone that it's best to do this thing without having all of the information on the first hand. Most laws are made by white men above the age of 50. How many of us fit that category in this room? So I think there's a disconnect. I think that the answer to that question could go on for eons about the priorities that aren't really directed toward women. Sure. So that's on there.
One of the things too we have to look at is our laws. As you go back and look at the law, there is a bill that has I pulled it. It deals with wage differentials. And the bill basically on the present law says that wage differentials between employees of the opposite sex are permissible only if such differentials are based on a system of seniority, merit, quality of work, quantity of work, blah, blah, blah. Now, what did you hear out of that? All right, that's on the current law. Is that if a man works more, do this more, then you can pay him more. It has nothing to do with the quality of work or anything of that sort. Now, that was the current law. Now so you have to look at this system and what are our legislators doing? So there are several folks in our legislative process that have actually done some things about it. It ain't passed yet, okay? It hasn't passed, but it says that now, in order for that to happen, it has to be based on merit, not on other differentials that has nothing to do with the quality of work. So as a woman, your work can be judged as low quality, even though it is the same or higher quality than someone else's work. Therefore, if a man did the same work, same level, they may get a wage increase, while you as a woman who has done more work at a higher quality don't, only because they said that your work was not of high quality. So you do have some legislation now that has to go through committees and get approvals that will make this on an even playing field for us. So you have to look at what's going on in our state system that impacts all of us and women in particular. Now, this is not necessarily a black female, white female issue. It's a woman's issue, all right? And so we do have several of our legislators that have tagged onto the bill. Now, I'm going to go a little bit further and say, if you know anything about our state system, you know that we have more Republicans in both houses than we do Democrats, both in the Senate and the House. And many times, those, and I'm not knocking the Republicans, don't get me wrong, but I'm just going based on experience and what I know, that many times legislation that comes up that looks like it's going to favor women or favor a minority group, it is shut down immediately. It doesn't even get out of committee sometimes. your sister, your brother. So employment, money, wages, it's impacted by our laws. So when you look at these pieces of information, when you talk about justice and law, you have to look at those things in particular. All right? That's my
Yes, please.
I think the direct answer to your question is that with the focus being on my brother's keeper, that makes me wonder what about us, just directly. And as far as what I've seen with the law and what they're doing here in Tennessee, I've seen that a lot of the laws seem to be aimed toward limiting the rights of women. Now me, because of what I do, I always look at things from what I do and from that angle, you know. And to me, with our brothers having a higher rate of incarceration or there being education issues, to me that's a symptom. So that's like if I have a headache every day and I'm steady popping a Tylenol or whatever to deal with the symptom of the headache, but I don't know, I need to really figure out why am I having this headache? Why is that happening? So for me, and from what I have seen and from our research as well, sexual child abuse plays a big role in our, in several different ways, academic, you know, incarceration. And so that's what I found with our men. And then when they are in prison, they or either might become abusers of other men or they're being abused themselves. And then when they are released from jail and can't get a job or can't keep a job, then, you know, they take that out on who they can, which is someone that is in their area, someone that's weaker than them, because they can't take their anger out on who they really want to take it out on. So then we receive the brunt. The statistics state that a child that is sexually abused is 3 to 5 times more likely to be delinquent as a child. If you are delinquent as a child, that more than likely will translate into you having issues with the law as an adult. And as an adult, someone who has been sexually abused is twice it's twice as likely that they will end up in jail. And even when we talk about academic issues, 39% might have academic difficulties, reading from some of the educational material that we have. 50% display cognitive abilities below the 25th percentile. 26% have grades that drop. 48% have below average grades. And then on the other spectrum is someone who wants to be perfect in everything. That's also a sign to look for. So for me, it's a matter of why are our brothers or why are our sisters being incarcerated at a high rate? That's a symptom. That's indicating there's a bigger problem, and more than likely that problem could be related to them being victimized as children.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that we are hoping to get at in this conversation is how all of these different pieces fit together and inform one another. So I appreciate you for lifting that up. And I want to say thank you, Ms. Betty, because I didn't say thank you.
That's all right. Good.
I'm being my good Southern girl that my mama told me to be. So I want to think about this connection even further and drill it back down to Memphis right now, right? In our city is named in a lawsuit regarding the backlog of rape kits, right? So can we talk a little bit about kind of how these two pieces that are fitting together, how our laws are happening, how they're being actually enforced or not enforced, right? And how that can work out to, and you started it, Sarah, you've already started it a little bit, how that can work out to become a problem for women and young people and people who just find themselves vulnerable in different ways. So really what I'm getting at here is it's important that we know what the law says. And then we actually have to know what's being done on the ground with our law. So what is the fact that we are still kind of not dealing with rape kits?
I think, of course, with the rape kits and what's been in the news about there being a backlog and things not being tested, I think that speaks to, and it's not helpful for women who have been victimized, because there is a culture of silence that's associated with rape and sexual child abuse. And in the news this week, it has been about the Stanford swimmer who sexually assaulted a young lady while she was unconscious, and the 6-month sentence that he got along with 3 years probation. But if you look deeper into the details, there's a lot. The victim's 12-page letter where she described having to undergo an hour-long rape kit and being smeared with this stuff and being poked and prodded, and the attacker's father saying that, calling her experience 20 minutes of action, and that he's so messed up behind all of this that happened that he can't eat his favorite food, which is steak, to the prosecutor, to the defense attorney questioning what she was wearing that night. And then I'm even drawing lines to when I was listening to the radio last week, and the Honorable Louis Farrakhan was on the Breakfast Club in New York, and he was saying how women are dressed a certain way because we invite rapists. And to me, it's just a matter of, even though we have come a long way when it comes to this particular issue with women, we are still so far back in the backwards woods part to where it's ridiculous. And there are also stories about women who have the courage to go to an emergency room after they've been raped, only to be turned away because the hospital said, well, we can't do a rape exam, so you have to drive here. So for me, with the backlog of these kids not being tested, when a woman overcomes whatever in order to come forward and with the hopes of receiving justice and with the hopes of being heard after being violated, and having the presence of mind to do that, because that's a mentally, spiritually, any level that you can think of, shattering experience, and then for nothing to be done, that to me promotes that culture of silence. Why come forward? No one's going to do anything. And for those women who know their attackers to still have to see these people walking and roaming about free, I mean, just think how helpless. The only place you feel safe is volumes as definitely an opportunity, if I may put a positive spin on it, that something needs to be done. This is not helpful for us, and with the statistics being what they are, we're definitely not setting ourselves up for success in successfully combating and eradicating this rape culture that we have and this silence that's associated with it.
Rape culture, silence, all of that speaks to safety. I'm coming to you in just a hot second. I just want to take a moment for us to kind of connect some of these dots, right? So Ms. Betty really made a very powerful point about our legal system and the ways in which our legal system leaves room for the invisibilization of women and women's labor. If the law doesn't tell you exactly how to gauge, right, the quality of work, then what that means is whoever's in charge gets to decide what the quality of the work is, right? Right? And so that's about who then gets to tell the story, right? And so then when that same legal system is in some way associated with people who decide that it's not a priority to test rape kits, right? Is that not having some of the same effect? And so, right? And so the outcomes, I'm writing down words that are really important. So silence is really important, an important word. And also the last word that really caught me was safety. And Ali, I really want to come to you to talk about kind of what do you think the legal protections agenda ought to look like in this city for women? And to think about it, we can all really start thinking about these questions. What demands can we make of our lawmakers and officials to ensure that women, and I mean women in the broadest spectrum, knowing that trans women are, highly likely to be involved in domestic violence situations and have nowhere to go in this city. So,
a couple of things I want to speak to. One is Tennessee ranks in top 10 for the number of women who are killed by men. We're number 6. We're better now. We were number 3. And most of those women who were killed, 98% of them knew the person who killed them. And most of those women were killed by firearms. And so you take a state that's gun-friendly, and then you have a high rate of domestic violence, which leads to a number of domestic violence homicides, which we see. So one of the things we've been working with as a newly formed statewide coalition, there are federal protections in the sense that if a person has been convicted of a domestic violence offense, that they should not have access to a gun. Now the problem comes down to enforcement, and so that's what we're working on with a number of cities, because it seems to be an issue throughout the state of Tennessee, making sure that convicted domestic violence offenders do not have access to guns. The other thing I would say is just how law enforcement does its job. One of the things we've seen over the last few years, and some others in this room have worked on this initiative for quite a while, we're doing some work in terms of working with law enforcement and in terms of decreasing barriers to accessing the criminal justice system for domestic violence victims. And I see Deborah Club back there who was working on this project for a number of years. One, we're seeing that sometimes there's a refusal by law enforcement. That might be too strong a word, but sometimes law enforcement officers, when they're making a scene of domestic violence calls, and that victim says, I've been sexually assaulted by my boyfriend or my husband, they did not put that into the police report. And so we are seeing that happen a number of times, and so now we're having to monitor those cases. The second thing is strangulation. Oftentimes is the other way that many women will die at the hands of a man. And although it was made into an aggravated assault a few years ago, again, when new laws or laws change, oftentimes there's not an action plan that comes with it. So what we found was, again, law enforcement officers are still not writing up the police reports correctly. So again, we know there's a strong tie between strangulation and the possibility that woman died at the hands of that man. So again, we're monitoring those cases and working with law enforcement to kind of come up with an action plan in terms of training law enforcement officers how to investigate those cases, and work with the district attorney's office and how do you prosecute those cases.
That is an answer to my question. What does the agenda look like? It looks like these things. I love that.
One quick thing, I too want to acknowledge the club that's in here and the work that the Memphis Area's Women Council has been doing in that whole area, especially around the rape kits, as well as a campaign around it says no more. Memphis says no more to domestic violence, no more to sexual assault. And you may go to various places throughout the city. See, that's advocacy. That, you know, it's grassroots, it's out there, but that's advocacy, and it goes back. It's some of that stemmed from the lack of testing of the rape kits, and it grew into this campaign of women coming together, community conversations about it. And I know I'm probably getting ahead of myself in terms of what can we do, but I just wanted to recognize her and the work that her group and others have done in order to make that a priority. One last note about that. I was at a community event where they brought in someone, I can't remember exactly what it was, but they talked about why police officers and those investigating these cases may not understand about the reaction that women have to domestic violence. And to rape. Everybody responds to it differently. And in the past, they are trained to see one reaction or not. If the woman would, you know, like that, then if she was calm and sedate about it, then they might have dismissed it as it's not rape, because that's the way they were trained, all right? But a woman as well as a man's brain operate differently. We actually respond to crisis differently. And as a result of that, training in understanding our psyche, and it has helped, will help the police department and others involved in this particular case. That's what advocacy does. It helps bring things to the forefront so that we can then begin to work out a plan of action that helps everybody. It's time, but it's doable. So just give her a round of applause.
Yes,
just to kind of, I guess, piggyback what you were saying. Well, to speak to the aspect of what you were saying about the training and the training obviously being antiquated or never sufficient, who knows. One thing that we can do is demand more from those who we pay and elect. You know, I understand if it was antiquated. I expect you to be on the cutting edge of what's going on. You are policing the people. We should all demand more. In Memphis alone, women are the majority of the population. African American women, the majority of that subset. Why aren't our issues on the forefront of what we're talking about on a local level? Before we get to Nashville, to DC, you know, on a very local level, why aren't we talking to our county commissioners? Do we know who our city council representative is, and then the state representative who represents our area in Tennessee? You know, and even if we know, do we know what they're up there saying or doing? That's the most difficult part of politics. It's not so much as do the people care, it's are they informed enough to make the decision that is in their own best interest? All of us. You know what I mean? Are we informed enough? So one thing we can do is educate ourselves, you know. Don't be afraid to say we don't know and then figure out how to find out. You know, Google changed the world. So, you know, why are we so uneducated in these areas? Why are we still beating and pounding the tables? And why does our advocacy and our citizenship stop at the voting booth? You know, after the vote is over, why are we not still on the phone calling these people who we put in office? You know, who we're paying our dear tax money for, who are getting perks like Grizzlies tickets. I don't care about your perks. I don't. I believe good people deserve good perks. You know, I want to make more money the better work I do. That's just the truth about my life. So I'm not messed up about the perks to attract better candidates and situations. But I am messed up about us as citizens not holding their feet to the fire. And when they don't move like the fire's hot, I'm messed up about us not getting them out of office. So what can we do? We can decide to advocate for the things that we feel are important with our local politicians if we're going to change the law.
Absolutely. So it's awesome to be able to moderate a panel where the questions get answered before they get asked, because they don't even have to bother with the questions being asked. But I do want us to make an end here. I want to say thank you for that, because that's where we were going next. Like, what does it look like? But the question I want to ask is, how can we, those of us in this room, really put a foot forward to making exactly what you're talking about to make it happen? Because the reality is, while there is a lot of great work going on, oftentimes for some reason we are not all able to be connected to the work, right? And so we in this room probably almost, if not all, agree that we need to hold our legislators and our leaders responsible, right? There is a sister down the street somewhere who knows that something is wrong and maybe knows exactly what is wrong, doesn't know what to do about it. And so I know that we in this room are all doing great work, but how do we make that work visible? My statement on this is always, and I'm always trying to call folks of faith into conversation with their own faith leaders. Because if you can get in a church, you can get a whole lot of people, right? But the same way we have to make those demands of our state leaders, we have to make those demands of our faith leaders so that we can have those conversations. But what are some other ways that we can make those conversations visible?
I think it's very practical. If I can say, I just aligned myself very recently, myself and Sister with a group of women, African American women, who have decided that, you know, we are sick of what's happening in the African American communities, neighborhoods in this city, right? In the world, but in this city more particular. So what are we going to do, right? We're just going to go and be there. We're just going to go and be there. We're not going to go out and pass out leaflets. We're not going to go out and try and cook, you know, I say, my brother, you need to. No, we're just going to be there. We're going to be very present in their lives. Incarnational witness. People talk about Christianity good, bad, ugly, and the one reason it was so successful is because of the incarnation of witness. Prophets, people who were trying to pass the word on went to where the people were who they were trying to affect. It's a very simple thing. So if we just have to be visible in our neighborhoods. We have to be where they are. We have to go to those scary places. That's the truth. And that's not everybody's role. So I do want to say that. That's not everybody's role. I don't believe in shaming people because I'm afraid of that. That's not everybody's role. I believe that the civil rights movement was a beautiful movement. Is a beautiful movement. There's a lot of marching, there's a lot of protesting, there's a lot of lobbying, I'm not a marcher. I'm not afraid to tell people, really, I'm not. Some people try to shame me because I won't come. That's not my role. I do what I do best. You know what I'm saying? I'm somewhere building relationships. I know my strength. Allow people to work in their role and work in their strength, but go and be present in however you do it. So if you can't actually be in that place, empower the people who are going if that's what your strength and gift is. But I think it's very simple. We just need to be where the people are who we're trying to demonstrate those things to.
I agree. One of the things too is we're talking about what we can do. To me, one of the most important things is that we have to educate our communities. Woman, man, whatever. Woman going to work, and you got children. Your life is about getting those children fed, off to school, going to work, coming back home, hoping that you got enough money to last through the month, to pay your bills. Life happens, all right? And when life happens sometimes, other things they don't have time for other things, all right? And so I'm just being realistic. Not everyone is a walker. Not everyone is an advocate. Sometimes we just have to help by educating. Okay, how do we do that? How do we educate? Well, there's a number of ways. You collaborate with various groups and organizations, all right? And whatever that mission of that organization is, maybe they have a little corner of the world that they work in, and they educate about certain areas that are important, all right? I may educate about something that pertains to those things in my little corner of the world. But I do think educational forums in the communities that you go in, and most of all our communities, we have community centers, all right? I'm being practical. You go out and you start educating. Now, let me just tell you what's going to happen. Just say you went to the Orange Mountain, and I know you got a lot of good Orange Mountain folks here. Got a great director out there. You may only get 3 people that night, all right? So how do you get the people to come to receive the information that you have? It takes time, all right? It takes time. So you gotta be patient, all right? You gotta be patient with them because this is new for them. They've not been, no one has cared this much about them to bring the information to them. Therefore, you have to stay out there. So my little niche may be the Orange Mountain community. We ask all these organizations come together, and I'm saying I'm going to take care of the Orange Mountain community. And we go out, and my goal there, regardless of how many people show up, we educate those. Then we tell those that showed up, go tell your neighbor. Then we have some flyers that one day we get some kids, give them a little bit of money, we put some things on their doors. Now, some people can't read, all right? So you got to make sure whatever you're passing out, that they can understand it. I'm a practical person. I'm a type A personality. I like to do things, this, and this. So I know that may happen, so that the next time we have a little meeting, maybe 10 people will show up. So those 10 go impact 10 more. You see what I'm saying? It's going to take time, but educational forums, educational opportunities, the radio stations, all of these are part of the network that helps us to educate our community. All right? And I want to tell you, our community is not just African American community. All right? You got African American, you got Caucasian, you got Asian, you have a whole diverse community. you got Muslims, use your community that you have. And when I talk community, all right? When we collaborated to do Women Vote Early, we got our deal with Republican women, Democratic women, sororities. We didn't care if you black, white, blue, or green. The goal was Women Vote Matters. Vote early. Make a difference in the election. So those are the kinds of things. That's just one. I got a whole ton, but I'm just going to let everybody else talk about it. But that's what you got to do. You got to come together with some people, collaborate, and say, we want to talk about this issue. We want to educate the community on this. And then you start working on it. And it's going to take some time. So if you're not in for the long haul, don't come.
I'm 100% with you on that. We are running into time. However, what I would really love for us to do, first of all, is to have each of you take a moment to kind of give a little bit of a wrap up. And Aliyah, I feel like you have had the least time. But I want to start with you, and it is a specific question. And the specific question is, because you're on this panel, because you're already doing work that is, in and of itself, wrapped up in justice for women, and particularly, right? I'd really like to hear how you would most like to hear the community plug into your work specifically, if at all, and if not, how they might be able to at least get involved in advocacy around your work.
I think I would just say voices. I mean, we have a member of a group that we help support. Joyce Cowles is back in the back. Joyce, raise your hand. One of the things we were running into the Family Safety Center is trying to bring awareness about domestic violence. And oftentimes the media will call us and say, okay, we need a survivor willing to tell their story. And so then and there's all kind of confidentiality issues around that. And so I would struggle, and it's like, okay, who could I call? What client may be okay, or former client may be okay telling their story. And then finally, we're like, there are survivors out here already telling their story. Why not partner with them and collaborate with them? And so there's a group that we work with. So anytime the media calls us, we know we have a list of women and one man who's willing to either do interview with the radio or TV or whatever the case. And that has been so powerful. I mean, because I can give the numbers right in the stats, but somebody listening to a survivor and their story, that just takes it to a whole another level. And so sometimes it's just having a vehicle for people to connect to. And for us, it's been really having survivors to be a part of the work that we do. And then also continue to have that constant loop of information. So one of the things that SisterReach is working with us with right now is doing a series of focus groups with all kinds of segments of the population around domestic violence survivors. That means LGBT, trans women, African American women. And so again, we want to continue to feed their history, their experience back into our work. So again, we make sure we are being victim-centered in what we do, and we're staying true to survivors.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Okay, so one last question. One last question for you, and then we're going to move on to the next person. I have decided that I want to advocate with my local politician about domestic violence. What do you want me to call and say?
To continue to fund organizations that do this work.
Continue to fund, or perfect answer. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you, Aliyah. Let's give Aliyah a hand. So, Jasir, the same kind of questions. How would you love to see the community most attempt to plug into your work? And then, if we were going to make one ask to our political leaders for you and your work, what would that ask be?
Well, I think the primary thing that I would ask for the community is for us to recognize that childhood sexual abuse is our problem. I went through training at the Child Advocacy Center, and at the end of the training they said that basically we're all responsible if a child is sexually abused. It's either because we're the one that's abusing the child, or we knew about it and we covered it up, or we didn't do what we needed to do to recognize the signs and help prevent it. So as far as the community helping me, if you weren't a victim, then you know someone who was. I mean, that's just the state that we're in. And because of that, you can relate to the work that I do and to the work that the other organizations do, like Sister Latroska Wilson here and her daughter wearing No More Silence shirts. She has a movement, No More Silence. And we've linked together, and that's the other thing, like if you have an organization, link with us, because I'm here, she's here, but when we start coming together, then we can make a fist and we can affect change. If your organization isn't about sexual child abuse, I'm sure that there's something that we can do together in order to bring awareness, something that you can do for me and something that I can do for you, to bring awareness to both of our causes. The other thing that I would ask is that we have a need for just anyone to help. You know, we promote healing through the arts, so if you're an artist, please donate your talent. If you are a survivor, I'm really trying to build a survivors network. I know I focus on children, but there are just a bunch of adults walking around, and we need to build a survivors network where we can be free to be us and just have someone, a network of people that we can call. I'm still plagued by dreams 20 years later, and I wake up and I need to call someone. There's someone I need to talk to. You know what I mean? So that's what I would say is just no matter who you are, what you do, childhood sexual abuse is something that you can contribute to the prevention of or the healing from. And as far as our lawmakers, you know, especially with what's going on, help us to eliminate this culture of shame and help us to eliminate this silence. Let's hold people accountable for what they do. Let's reconsider the statute of limitations, because that's also a big barrier when it comes to people who have been abused. I know with me, it wasn't until I was abused that I started remembering past abuse, and there was nothing that I could do about it. You know, because I had blocked that out of my head. So I think if we work together, hold people accountable, get this backlog taken care of, and make sure this never happens again, and reconsider the statute of limitations, at least in certain circumstances, that would be the most beneficial.
Thank you. Ms. Betty, how can we plug into the work that you are doing, and what right now, because I know you've got a lot of things that we need to talk to our legislators about, but if you had to lift up one thing for us in this room to decide we're going to call tomorrow, what would it be?
Call the legislators tomorrow on, wow, we have so many, the health care. There's been a task force that's been going around. As I mentioned to you earlier, our primary area is health, education, economic empowerment. There are like 260,000 Tennesseans that's without health care. They call it gap. And so the House Speaker sent people to the various cities, a committee to the various cities to look at what are the needs in terms of health care. Well, I was at this session in Memphis, and very quickly, they gave us a lot of lip service, but really they're not going to do anything. So now we have a letter out asking for citizens to go in and say to Beth Hartwell, please take care of and health insurance. The governor tried to reassure Tennessee for the gap, but it died in committee. So now we're trying to make sure health care. So that's what we're tell our legislators to go out and make sure that happens. And for our organization, we give a lot of free programs out. We believe in educating the population. Currently, we have programs that we do financial workshops and things of that sort. You can connect with us that way. You can join our organization, be part of it in terms of the things that we do. So right now on June 25th, we got a financial workshop that we got going on. It's free, breakfast and lunch, but people need to be educated on how they can generate income and how they can make that income worth it.
What are the best ways to plug in all of your works? And if you had all of us in here ready to call somebody tomorrow about one something, what would that message be?
The best way to plug in, so at SMA, I work with young people who are in foster care, mostly. That's most of our programs are designed for those young people. So kind of because of the sensitivity of that population, it's not as easy to volunteer with them. But we always let do things for them. Preferably new. We accept gender use. We have a lot of that. Especially school uniform, especially for the larger size kids. I mean, it's a real big need, and you'll just, and shoes. You'll be surprised, you know, the difference it makes when they feel comfortable about their appearance. So you can plug in the SMA. I already told you about to bring y'all laundry and you put some money. So make sure you do that. Go to the website, which is www.smaweb.org. You can donate. One way to plug in the Memphis Artists for Change, you know, if you're an artist, be willing to support the work by lending your hand. I rarely ask for you to use your art form unless we're going to benefit. And if you're a supporter of the arts, support the artists. Buy their stuff. Book them for gigs. Pay them fairly. These are the decent things we ask for. If you write a letter to the legislature, I'm going to go back to where I do SMA. Right now, juvenile justice population in this city is being rushed to the prison system at alarming rates. So Memphis has been identified as one of the sites for the JDAI, which is Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative. So you're trying to come up with alternatives as opposed to locking young people up. Once you spend one day in prison, the negative outcomes in your life are exponentially multiplied by one day overnight in prison. Same thing with juvenile justice. Same thing actually with foster care youth one day past the age of 14. And that's just being put in a safer environment. So I ask that you just, lobby your legislators, number one, so we can reduce incarceration. I know that there are, initiatives to build places. We're trying to keep young people from being locked up as much as possible, if at all possible, especially for nonviolent offenses. And our young people are being locked up at an enormously, egregiously unfair rate compared to their counterparts for nonviolent offenses. Again, what I spoke about justice, not that we don't want everyone dealt with, we just want to deal with people in a fair way.
So we're about to open up for questions, a few questions for a few minutes from all of you. But before we do that, I would just like us to walk through what kind of awesome work these panelists have done. So as we've been talking, as we've listened to everything that everyone has had to say, there are some things that have arisen. So some of the things that the biggest problem around issues impacting women in our city has to do with silence and invisibilization. Our issues just aren't seen and heard. Sometimes it's because people are attempting to shame. Sometimes it's because people just don't know how to address. Sometimes it's because people don't really understand the issue and just need to be educated, right? But there's a vacuum in some ways when it comes to just messages about our issues. This is what I've heard of, and the floor will be open so that we can hear what everybody else heard. The wonderful work that we've done, though, just in these few minutes, is also lifted up some solutions. The themes that came out in terms of solutions were solidarity, working together, identifying the ways in which we all help one another. That means listening to one another and being open to really hearing what are the needs of one another. The other that is very important and goes hand in hand with solidarity is presence, right? We can't know what the women in Memphis need unless we are really trying to be present with the women in need. And so solidarity, standing together, but being also with, just don't stand up next to them, what it is that they need. And then if the main problem is silence, probably the main solution is voices. Speak out on what you know how to speak out on. Learn what you need to know to speak out on what you don't yet know how to speak on. Help other people learn how to speak out up for themselves, because the voices of the people who are impacted are actually the most valuable in these conversations, right? And we've also got some kind of, hey, let's go. These are some things we can work on. So we can work on talking to folks about funding organizations that do domestic violence work. And I would argue the same with sexual abuse, right? Work. We can talk about reconsidering the statute of limitations. These are concrete things we can do on particularly childhood sexual abuse, because you get grown and you realize, oh my God, that was wrong, and it has impacted me, right? And he's still over there, so okay, that's a whole other. I have to remember I'm not preaching today. Healthcare. Tennessee really needs our voices to be heard around healthcare, because it is often the working poor who find themselves in the gap, and the working poor are often women who are trying to rear children and do other things and can't afford to be sick, but can't afford to get well. And so that is definitely something that we can collect information on how we can go about, giving out some information for us to advocate on these issues. And then, oh my gosh, juvenile detention and criminalization, and trying to figure out what are the alternatives, and how do we then push our leaders toward alternatives that do less harm than what we have in place right now. And go wash your clothes. And so that's like, as a whole group, let's thank our panelists one more time. I believe in a lot of clapping, so we'll work hard. But at this point, we're going to open up for questions, and we think right here, then. Okay. Yes. Oh, you got your question? It would probably help me to not offend anybody by overlooking or not remembering if you write it down. But I know you for it. So, okay. So, Lista asked, are we as women prepared to call out and dismantle the patriarchal structure of our mayors, local political parties, particularly Democrats, in order to advocate a feminist agenda, truly feminist agenda? Or are we too afraid to go?
Right now, right, this is 90. Yeah, we got the woman who's running in Midtown where this is 90. Used to be on Planned Parenthood board, advocating women's rights. She's running against a male who has been in the local Democratic Party. And when the issues came up with all the women's health, he sat there and let this Planned Parenthood lady just talk so bad to it and said nothing. And he's, one of us, okay, but on the women's, we're having to go to him and beg him, can you please stop them from having ultrasound video? Can you please whatever? But it's like we're not in charge. We're trying to get him to do us a favor, but as somebody said, we're over 50%. So why are we always asking for a favor instead of us being in charge?
And so, I guess the combination of the question and comment is, first of all, what do we feel like kind of our response as women to this broad situation where we do live in this tension where it doesn't seem like our local government cares? I think the answer was in the comment, right? Sure was. But I wonder if we had anything else.
Well, I mean, if you got a representative that's not representing you and your issues, and you make up 50% of that particular district or whatever, your women need to get together and put your candidate, put a candidate up there, support that candidate morally and financially, and vote them out of office.
And I think that's all here, by the way.
Yeah, the reason I'm saying that, I was involved in Tennessee at the legislative days, and I observed some of our local Memphis representatives vote on some stuff. I'm saying, are they from Memphis? I know they're from Memphis. And they're voting against something that would help us. And I said, I thank goodness they're not my representatives.
Right. And what she sees. So I'm going to answer this next question because I feel like my way of doing things may have influenced the way that the panel responded. So the question was, when you speak of accountability, why are we afraid to call names of who we should hold accountable? I haven't called names because I am at work, and I work for a 501c3 organization, right? But I do want to make sure our panelists, if they are here in their own personal space and not endangering their jobs, are free to call names.
Can I elaborate on that? That was my question.
Yes.
And I'm P. Moses, if you don't know who I am, but I'm one of those people that just doesn't follow and sync with the rest of the method. So each one of you spoke about accountability, and I want you to know that I really appreciate your courage and sharing your experience, because that really makes me feel, good about who I am, because it takes a lot to do that. But each one of you spoke on accountability, and I have a petition here that's been online for a while, in which I seek to hold the main person accountable, and that person is the district attorney and required for those untested rape cases. No one other than maybe Megan Wyros, who was someone directly affected by a rape situation, has said that publicly, and I don't understand. I'm like her. If we make up 50% of the population, why is everyone so afraid, not just to sign my petition, but to say this person was responsible? The state attorney general is responsible for the protection of the state of Tennessee, and all the attorney generals in those counties are responsible for protecting the public interest of that county. And she was the elected official, like you said, when this happened. And it's like, you speak of the voice and the silence, but the silence to me speaks volumes. Why is everybody afraid to call Edward Stanton, elected official, sexually harassed one? The county settled it for over $50,000. Why is everyone afraid to not just vote Tammy Sawyer, who I guess is going to be in office, but to remove and recall the people who are not doing their job? That was
Well, I was going to say that I am on my job.
What I would say is, leadership continues to change, right? And sometimes we have a lot of faith in the new leader, and like, okay, why do things stay the same? And I think it comes down to dismantling institutional practices that continue to perpetuate the inequities, whether they're gaps or cracks or whatever the case is. So yes, I think leadership is critical, but I think it's even more critical that we look at the institutions and how institutions become a living organism that continue to just keep going and chugging along even though they're not working well for anyone. So we focus our work on that and not, pointing out a particular person. Sometimes it's not a particular individual.
Anybody else have a comment to that question?
It's also a process. It's a process. Pointing out someone, unless you got all the facts, you don't want to do more harm than good. So a lot of times what we do is we're angry. I'm not talking about you personally. I'm saying we are angry about the situation, and so we start discussing and fussing and carrying on about it, but we haven't done our homework. And I found that to be true with a lot of situations in Memphis, that we don't do our homework. And so we get out there, and then once we get out there, we find out that we're not right. And then everything we do is of non-effect, because we have been proven to be not, we didn't do due diligence. And so what I'm saying, everything we do is a process. Look at the process. If this person did this, we have all the information to back it up. And then if we have the information to back it up, then we do our next course of action. Like, I'm a type A personality, so I'll think that way. So I should try to take the emotions out of it in order to look at it from a very systemic system process. I know that maybe that's not the answer, but I think it's a process. Sometimes you cannot remove people overnight, all right? So we have to make sure that we got our facts together and everything's correct.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times people fall out of love with religion, not realizing that some things require a lot of energy, and some things can be a protracted struggle. You know what I'm saying? We live in a world where it's instant gratification. You know what I'm saying? And no one understands the value of due diligence, as was mentioned, or just understands that, hey, this is not going to be something that happens overnight. I also think we are afraid of perfectionism. And I think also education also plays a big role in it because people might not understand that that is an option, or they might not understand what my options are. And that's what education plays into that as well. So I think it's a variety of different factors that bring a petition like this. Everybody has to sign it.
And I think I want to add something. At least two.
I'm not ready to be. I told Sharice ahead of time that I was going to be late because I was being proactive in the work that I do. And I'm about to be late, and I told her I was going to have to leave early for the same reason. But I just wanted to say to Sharice and to the panel, because I know, and I see so many in this room that I know and have known me for so long. I would just like to encourage everybody in this room to please not let the conversation end here. That is my biggest concern, is that you have so many people in this room, so much talent, so many positive things that are going on and have been, so much wisdom in this room. And we take it and we express all of our concerns and have this big ball of energy during the time that it's being discussed. And then we go back and we put it on the shelf. And there may be 2 or 3 that continue to do this work, and everyone else just sits back and, oh, I remember, I saw her and stuff. I want to see people be very intentional about carrying this from conversation to real proactive change, and not let it be about, I've been in it longer than you, you don't look like me, your background is not mine, your social economic status is different, your sexual orientation is not like mine, you go to the mosque rather than you go to the church, or you don't go anywhere. The common thread in this room is that everyone that's here is here because they have a genuine concern about these issues. So use your voice, use this opportunity, use this platform that Sharice has so eloquently put together to ensure that when we leave these doors, that it doesn't just fall to the wayside. Because if you do, you're doing yourselves a disservice, you're doing the community a disservice, you're doing the nation of women that continuously fight and have fought, bled, and died for this opportunity, for these voices. If we don't use them, then what is the point? You may as well have just taken this time and thrown it. So that was what I wanted to share. And just to say to Sharice personally, thank you so much for having the mindset and the vision to put this together. You have an awesome panel because I know these women, I know them personally, so I know what you have up here. And I know half of this room, so I know the talent, the skills, and the desire that takes place in here. So I just wanted to strongly urge you all, please don't let it talk about your side. Use your voice for the intent that it was given. Don't let this time go to waste. And I'm going to my next. Thank you so much.
First started raising your hand. And I promise I'm not a good speaker. First off, I don't know why Natasha invited me, but it's a pleasure to be here. Jasir, each one of you ladies, I see myself in you. So everyone is important to me. March 8th, 2008, I was raped, holding my daughter. At the time, she was 4 months old. SisterReach.org.